Hello one and all, and welcome to Behind the Glass. I'm your host, Sam, from the YouTube channel Seen Through Glass.
And I'm Tony from Gravelwood Car Sales.
Yes, you are. Each week we get together, we talk about cars, motorsport, F1, what else? Cars? We talk about cars. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can watch us on youtube.com/Behind the Glass. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. And Tony, if people want to support this podcast, what should they do?
Watch it.
No. But also head to Patreon. You can support us on patreon.com/Behind the Glass. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Hello one and all, and welcome to After the Checkered Flag, the F1 special series here on Behind the Glass, my podcast. I'm Sam from the YouTube channel Seen Through Glass, and alongside me, once again, it's Paul Wallace from Supercars of London.
Am I now officially a regular?
I think you are now officially the co-host of After the Checkered Flag.
I haven't signed a contract yet, but I'm looking forward to that.
Nor has Tony, but never tell him that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm always terrified that he'll suddenly go, Sam, can we just talk? I was like, no. Anyway, moving on. Yes, if you are fans of the usual Behind the Glass podcast and you don't know what we're doing here and why Paul's here and Tony's not, this is the additional content we do, the additional series called After the Checkered Flag, where this year we sit down to review each Formula One Grand Prix. I say that, but we actually did miss one.
We missed Portugal.
We missed Portugal, and then we did a very dodgy virtual one for Imola. And anyway, long story short...
Yeah. I promised that I would be here every Monday, whether you are here or not.
Moving forward,
I think was what
Paul
my promise.
Will be here every single week to review the Grand Prix. But yeah, it's just a chance for us to nerd out on a sport we love and a sport which I think is becoming more popular.
I agree.
Because of Netflix, Drive to Survive, there's people that never considered F1 who are now like, oh, I love that Daniel Ricciardo guy.
Every race weekend, I get new WhatsApp messages from friends from school, university that are tuning in, which is great because it just means that it's becoming more mainstream. And hopefully...
Well, we'll be less nerdy.
We won't look like aliens.
Yeah, we won't be so shunned. I hope, though, all those new fans that are sort of starting to, get turned on by F1 didn't decide to tune into their first Grand Prix the weekend that's just been, the Monaco Grand Prix. Because, let's just come out and say it, what a boring race.
Yeah, well, I feel like there was so much hype leading up to the Monaco Formula One Grand Prix, as there is every single time the Monaco Formula One is happening, for good reason. Not because we get good races, but because the before and after bit is normally quite exciting. Yeah. We get to see the celebrations, we get to see the parties. Every Formula One driver dreams of winning Monaco, for no idea why. But then obviously the beginning of this race in particular was exciting, but also heartbreaking for many people.
For myself. I would say the reason that the drivers get so excited, and the reason that I get so excited, I still think it's kind of the ultimate test of a driver's endurance.
It's a different discipline.
I think exactly that. It's a fantastic display of just how precise and relentless a Formula One driver can be. And of course, you've got to look at it as a Grand Prix weekend, not just the race. And there are multiple tests, especially, of course, Saturday, that one lap that you've got to absolutely nail. And some people didn't nail, but we're going to come on to that. And so we're going to get into, of course, should there still be a Monaco Grand Prix? Because it's the ultimate question we have to ask every year. But fundamentally, I think yes, just to kind of skip ahead of ourselves.
Is that the end of the podcast now?
Yeah.
Like, should we just go?
We'll just finish it there. But yeah, unfortunately, in modern day Formula One, it does tend to lead to very processional, very boring races, of which this was peak processional and dull. So I do hope any new potential F1 fans aren't judging the sport on that one race and deciding, well, I'm not going to watch this. What a load of crap. Because there were a lot of storylines. There's a lot of intrigue to discuss over the weekend. We're just going to struggle to really get much out of the actual race.
I know, we're going to have to wait until next March to get quite an exciting episode that Netflix produce about Monaco.
Yeah, that's exactly, that'll be the most exciting part of the Monaco Grand Prix 2021. And then
everyone that's coming into Formula One next year are going to really look forward to Monaco next year and then realise it's normally quite dull.
Well, look, there are, as I say, lots of things to talk about outside of the actual Grand Prix, but we're going to follow the same formula we always do.
Do you know it's raining today, right now in Monaco?
I know.
24 hours on.
But was
we
it
could
raining
have had a wet
on
race.
Saturday morning or Sunday morning for the F2? Sorry, GP2. Sorry. No, F2. What's it called?
Well, there was a huge crash on Sunday morning.
That was the Alpine regional thing. Anyway, there was rain across the weekend, but obviously not for any of the Formula 1 sessions.
Classic.
But yeah, we're going to follow our same format, which is basically to go through the finishing order in reverse order, discussing each person's race. But I think in this situation, their race weekend, because that was, that's where the intrigue and insight or discussion points came about. And unfortunately, we have to start with just, I'm going to cry. I'm going to cry.
No, come on.
With Charles Leclerc.
Oh.
He's officially last.
Yeah, of course.
Officially.
I thought you were going to start by talking about Mick Schumacher and his crash.
Hey.
Oh, okay.
Don't get ahead of ourselves.
I
say plenty to talk about from the race weekend as a whole. But yeah, Charles Leclerc. So if you missed the headlines, the man, the myth, the legend, did qualify on pole, which we're going to flesh out in a second. But unfortunately didn't end up starting the Grand Prix, his home Grand Prix. We've seen this so many times over the years of drivers having serious bad luck at their home races. Felipe Massa, I think, most famously at Brazil. Rubens Barrichello as well. Actually, it was Barrichello who was unlucky. Massa did very well in Brazil. But, certain tracks would just seem to not, work out well. For Leclerc, it's Monaco. Never finished a race at his home Grand Prix as a Formula One driver.
Yeah. But the last time he definitely overdrove because he had a bad qualifying session. I remember that race weekend and he was just an idiot out there.
He was, but...
This weekend was totally different. A totally different drive. I felt like a more mature qualifying session, and I was looking forward to and kind of hoping to see a Ferrari on the top spot.
Well, so this is the thing, like coming into Thursday, out of nowhere and out of the box, Ferrari looked quick. Charles Leclerc obviously missed FP1 through an issue. Carlos Sainz right up there, and then in FP2 they were P1 and P2. I mean, it was genuine pace, and I think at that point, people were like, oh, what's going on here? They're trying to attract some new sponsors or something's going on. Everyone's sandbagging. I was like, oh my God, like jumping off the rooftop. It's going to happen. They're back. But yeah, coming into Saturday, proof was in the pudding and they were genuinely fast. And I think there's going to be we're going to have to assess this, right? Going into the next race, Azerbaijan, is this genuinely pace from Ferrari? They have looked quick this season. Out of nowhere, Leclerc's been banging in the solid results. They haven't looked race winning quick. Have they just suddenly found a whole lot of pace out of that engine? Did they bring in some specific upgrades from Monaco? Was there a reason why? Where did this race-winning pace suddenly come from?
I don't know. And I'm not sure the next race is going to be the best test to see whether they've got that pace, because Baku, even though it's a street circuit, it is the most different race comparative to Monaco in the sense it's all straights. It's all like 90-degree right angle turns and all straights. So we're going to get one end of the spectrum of Monaco where they look really, really fast. What are they going to do there? Because, they've had some pretty decent results in the first few races of the season. But I'm not sure that they're going to come out and be as quick in Baku.
Which would be a shame, because I kind of want them to be there, because it really, puts the rest of the season in this. It's such an exciting point of it. We all thought it was going to be, Hamilton versus Verstappen, but now Ferrari going to get in the mix as well. I want that pace to continue, but we're going to have to wait and see. But no matter what, it meant that going into Saturday were genuine pole contenders. And it was an interesting one because I think we've seen it throughout the year so far. Carlos Sainz has been able to gel himself into that team so quickly in comparison to Danny Rick, who we're going to obviously talk about, Fernando Alonso and Sebastian Vettel. Carlos Sainz seems to have turned up and been able to get on the pace, qualifying and race very quickly. However, when it's counted, Charles Leclerc just been able to find a couple of extra tenths or an additional race pace that's just meant that he's been banging in these solid results and these solid qualifying laps. So building up to qualifying, I sort of thought Sainz is looking really quick, but I kind of was confident that if anyone was, Leclerc was going to be able to just find that extra couple of tenths again, and if anyone was going to get on pole, it was going to be him. But, and we did text about this, there was a part of me throughout the qualifying session that every time there was a yellow flag, something in my gut went, please don't be Charles, please don't be Charles.
Is that though because of his history at Monaco?
I think because of his history in general. Now, I love this guy. Of course, I still admit I am a Hamilton fan, but I think the minute Lewis does retire, I think I am going to be fully behind Charles. I just think the guy's Jesus. But
that makes Lewis God.
Yeah, literally. We have seen over the years that he does push the limits sometimes a little too far. and listen to a lot of the commentary and listen to a lot of the, analysis, he is a driver that seems to really balance on the knife edge of the limitations of the car and himself. And therefore, he's able to extract these incredible lap times. We're seeing him put Ferraris where they're not supposed to be because he's just so much on that edge. But that leads to mistakes. We saw it at Azerbaijan qualifying, a few years ago, and in Monaco. And we've seen it a number of different times. And so, because I knew so much was on the table with a potential pole at his home Grand Prix in a year where Ferrari shouldn't be getting it,
you just expected him.
I just thought
into the wall.
I was like, come on, please don't. But I was just kind of waiting for it.
Well, if he was going to go into the wall, there was the perfect time to go into the wall.
Okay. So, as I sip my coffee, let me ask you the question before we really overanalyze it. Do you think Charles Leclerc purposefully crashed?
No.
To secure pole position, or it was an accident?
No. But I also think if he didn't crash, he wouldn't be sitting on pole.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
You think he would have lost it?
I think he would have lost it. But so there's no way that a driver that is born to win, it is in his DNA. And that's kind of what I was going to jump into when you were talking about the way that Leclerc is able to extract that extra 2% or whatever. I think everything leads up to him one day winning a world championship. If you look back at his racing history, even to the Jules Bianchi and him seeing that, what happened with his dad in F2 and the way that he is built and every experience that he has had up until the moment that he wins this world champ, I genuinely think everything is happening for a reason for him at the moment. And one day everything will click and he will win a world championship. So that, then moving on to this race weekend, I just don't think someone that is that mentally driven to win would sabotage potentially. Like you just cannot, I'm trying to think of the right word, purposefully crash. Obviously give your entire pit crew a huge amount of work to do. Also potentially damage the internals of the car, which is what everyone was talking about immediately as he hit the barrier. It was a weird accident, as in he turned into the corner
way too early.
I think if he did, he was kind of hoping, just a little bit of front suspension damage.
So this is what I was going to ask you.
A little front wing.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to jump in because we saw it quite a few times throughout the race. People who were tapping that same barrier and maybe just messing up their front suspension or losing front wing or whatever, or just meaning that it had to go wide. I do not want to think or believe that he did anything on purpose.
But you do. Just based on the reaction that I had. You believe
he did. Do you know why? I didn't until this morning I woke up and I spoke to somebody who really knows the field.
Was it Charles?
I was texting Charles. No, but I don't want to name him because I think he would be upset that if I revealed. And immediately was like 100% he did it on purpose.
Really?
And I was like, no.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh my God,
on.
100%.
Right.
He didn't mean to smash the car that much, but he was this guy was convinced.
He put it into the wall.
The wall on purpose.
Right, so we've got to wait. I'm going to calculate about 15 years, if you give or take about 10 years for Charles' continual career. So we're going to have to wait an extra couple of years before Charles can actually spill the beans and tell us the truth as to whether he actually did it. We can be like, in Monaco, cast your mind back to 2021.
He has been on this podcast before, so maybe we'll just try and get him back on and just ask him face to face.
He's not going to drop that bombshell whilst he's still in that Ferrari seat.
But, proof in the pudding, I don't think he'll ever drop that bombshell because did you hear how much of a hard time the Sky F1 presenters were giving Nico Rosberg? I couldn't believe it. Martin Brundle, Dave Croft, everyone kept bringing up that time Rosberg went straight on going down towards the hairpin. And Rosberg was getting so upset because they were all like, oh, Nico, let's come to you. It's, it's why you got to put in that banker lap, isn't it? And Nico was turned straight like, yeah, come on, that's not a joke. I didn't. So I don't think Charles. No, I'm sorry. I don't think Charles will ever admit. But I also, as I say, I don't want to think that he did that. And also, given where he's at in his career and what he's thinking, I would assume he wanted to go out there and really get pole and nail pole and walk away.
It's not the right way of getting pole, is it?
But we have seen it. Yeah. Schumacher, Rosberg, and there are probably
all the cheats.
Don't start Schumacher. There are probably a number of other examples which just weren't so high profile
Yeah,
that
yeah.
over the years people have done to, it's a great way to get around Monaco very quickly. But the point which I want to pick up on you made is you said you don't think he would have got pole anyway. That's where I disagree, right? And at the end of qualifying, Verstappen, Bottas,
Oh, they
Sainz,
all came out.
I was going to get pole.
It's the easiest thing to say, isn't it?
The easiest thing to say. And there was a great analysis, I think maybe by Mark Hughes or by one of the journalists who really dove into, sector times and average speeds and all these things like that. And he came away saying, I actually don't think that would have been the case because where they were all up and comparatively, and Verstappen said, I lost a couple of tenths there. Even if he'd gained a couple of tenths, he still would have been slower than Leclerc. The point being is, it doesn't matter hypothetically what you could have done. I always find it annoying. You always hear these drivers saying, I could have been on pole if I hadn't messed up that corner.
Bottas said that in Spain. He was like, I lost 2 tenths there, otherwise I would be on pole.
But you lost 2 tenths. That's why you're not on pole.
Yeah.
And the point being, in Monaco, you've got to give it everything in that Q3 session because we all know yellow flags and red flags can happen. So you don't take that risk. And on the first time out, whether they'll say, I was building up to my final run. Great excuse.
Yeah.
The point being, Charles was fastest.
Yeah.
In that first run, whether somebody was only giving 98% instead of 100, well, your mistake for giving 98, Charles was clearly giving 100, and it paid off because at the end of that session, he was on pole. So,
and also in the wall.
And also
maybe he gave 110%.
He just did a little bit too far. So I want to believe that it was an accident and a mistake, but I was shocked to hear someone so involved in the sport
who said that it could potentially have happened, actually been a thing.
And as you say, we'll never know, but whether it was on purpose or not, it obviously didn't work out as planned because, the impact was hard, caused a lot of damage. But interestingly, whilst we were all talking about the gearbox, and there was this big question of, has he knocked the gearbox? And Ferrari said, the gearbox looks good. The actual final issue that caused them not to start the race
it wasn't the gearbox.
Was a drive shaft.
Yeah.
And you sent me a screenshot of, I think, Bonotto saying, we actually think that potentially the issue was already there or was separate, wasn't as a result of the accident. And we saw him sit out all of FP1. So
yeah, and the damage was on the other side of the car that actually didn't have an impact with the barrier. Whether everything got shunted in the accident or not, we will never know. And we know that Ferrari are very good at bending the truth.
Well, yes, and keeping their golden boy looking golden. I think they wouldn't have, Charles, it wasn't Charles' fault. The car was broken anyway.
But my heart did sink a little bit when he came on the radio and you heard it in that formation lap that he thought it was the gearbox. Obviously, his car didn't feel right. It was almost like, come on. Like, I kind of did see it happening. Don't want to get into this too early, but I did put a bet on that Charles Leclerc would be the first person to retire. Didn't get paid out from that because he didn't even start the race.
Classic.
For human.
Classic scamming betting company.
But yeah, it was all of that hype. Then we had that 10, 15 minute period. Was he going to have a pit start? Was he even going to make it? And then he got out the car and we're like, oh,
it's over.
Now we've got 2 hours of drivel.
Yeah, I mean, I literally texted you saying, the race is ruined.
Yeah.
Because, we all knew going to the Grand Prix, it was going to be relatively processional. As I say, we've seen it the last 5, 6, 7 years. It's just the formula that we've got right now of Formula One cars just doesn't suit Monaco for a race. And the minute Leclerc was taken out, it's like, well, that's that. I mean,
the most excited I was for the race was turn 1.
Yeah, that lap 1 at least. Because I thought going to the hairpin.
Maybe Verstappen. I just thought Verstappen would have had the fire in his belly. He would have been like, look, I've already elbowed Lewis out of a few turn 1s this year. Leclerc's going to be easy pickings.
So you thought it was going to be a huge smash?
My prediction, shall we say, was Verstappen was going to lead the first lap.
Okay. Even if Leclerc was on pole?
Yeah.
Starting on pole?
Yeah. So I won some money there.
Yeah. Well done. Your betting addiction is...
No. I'm just excited.
Clearly. Look, it was a huge disappointment. I think, as you say, another lesson for Charles to learn and hopefully just build his character and,
all of these things that get pulled away from him, I just think are being cemented and tattooed into him for when his time does come and everything does click. And I think it will come.
Yeah, I know. I'm confident it will come. But it was pretty heart-wrenching for any Leclerc or Ferrari fan. But I think as Formula One fans, we were excited to see something different. There was potential for this exciting race and, Ferrari back on top. So, yeah, we were all kind of robbed of that. But, hey, this is motor racing. These things happen. Let us know in the comment section below. Do you think that Charles could have potentially made contact with the barrier on purpose? I'm not going to say he had that crash on purpose, but he did turn in very early. But
did he want to red flag the session? Okay. Is the question.
Oh, God. Please no. Well, look, we've spent enough time talking about... I was
going to say, are we now going to go to P19? Like, go down the entire grid like this? Oh, my God.
I think we'll be able to rattle through quite a few of those quite quickly, considering Leclerc was really the only talking point of the whole weekend. So, yeah, P19, Bottas. Cool. Bad luck for Bottas.
I did feel really sorry for him.
Because in a weekend where the Mercedes was not there, it was clearly having issues, he was able to extract more from the car than Hamilton was. Yeah. And as amazing as Lewis has become as a rounded character, as being able to sort of, drive around issues and blah, blah, not that he has many, way back in the day with Rosberg, it was always Rosberg who could cope in these situations a little better. He'd read more of the instruction manual. He'd analysed more of the data to be able to see these problems coming and figure stuff out. And Lewis always seemed a bit frustrated back in the day. I just don't know what to do. I think over the years we've seen him, his brain has been able to, he's just got more experience with all these things. But this weekend, when the car didn't seem right, it did seem like Bottas was able to extract a bit more. And then for that, super freaky.
It was. When you could see that metal churning in the way that the gun wasn't getting, I was like, oh my God.
That's a weird thing. So essentially,
I've never seen that before.
Like re-threaded itself a million times over. The wheel just basically got stuck. So yeah, unlucky for him because it looked like a solid P2. I don't think he was going to do anything more spectacular than a P2.
No.
Judging by Mercedes' strategy for the rest of the race, they weren't going to try the overcut. They probably would have put him in early, which,
I think Bottas just saw almost 3 points against Lewis. I think he saw some nice championship points there. So to kind of walk away, I saw his statement that was just kind of gutted with the amount of work that they'd put into this weekend with the car not being right. For him to then have that was really frustrating. Yeah. I think he'll probably be a bit sulking this morning.
I mean, surely as well. I know it's race 4, something like that, but end of his championship.
Well, he is selling his road Mercedes up in where is it, Finland?
Yeah, his AMG GT that we all kind of went mad about, didn't we?
A bit of a desperate advert. He said, if you come and if you buy it, collect it from the go-karting track, and we can go go-karting together.
Someone please buy this car.
Yeah, I actually bought it.
Interesting. Okay, so moving on. P18, Mick Schumacher. Unfortunately, had the weekend we've been saying that he didn't want to or need to have. He needed to keep his head down and just, bring in the consistency. It was a scrappy, messy weekend. It made contact with the barriers a couple of times, obviously in qualifying.
Well, I mean, compare his crash to Leclerc's very small wall tapping comparison. And for Schumacher to be all right for the whole race, it shows that Leclerc and Ferrari did everything they could to confirm that the car was okay for the race, and it was another problem because there's no Schumacher hit that wall hard.
Oh, so hard. But also the sort of more point being, or the thing to analyse that, both the bits of contact he made were in free practice sessions, which, okay, fine, is a time when you're, trying to learn the track and figure things out, but also, come on, mate, hold a bit back.
Yeah, and the track limits in Monaco is the wall.
It's literally the wall. And yeah, unfortunately ended up, finishing behind Mazepin in the race. Mazepin, I think, had a strong weekend. I would genuinely say he looked good at various times. He didn't have any of the accidents that Schumacher did. And finish, even though Schumacher did that great overtake going into the Fairmont or the Lowe's hairpin, which was pretty ballsy and pretty reminiscent of his dad. Unfortunately, by the end of the race, he did finish behind Mazepin, which kind of made sense, I think, for that race weekend.
I think Mazepin shocked a lot of people.
Yeah, he had a strong weekend in Monaco, I think, so fair play to him.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was P17 Mazepin. So yeah, the Haas is unfortunately at the back of the field, as per usual. We then move on to Yuki Tsunoda. This is going to become a bit of a theme with our podcast at the minute. What's happened to Yuki?
I don't know.
I think he's lost a lot of confidence in himself, in that car. The pace is just gone, and he's just doing nothing, and he looks ragged. He's making little mistakes here and there, and he's just not quick. And
it's a classic rookie.
But so much potential at the beginning of the year, and something's just...
I mean, that car's fast as well.
Super fast. Pierre Gasly up in P6. As we know, that car's fast. We've spoken about the potential in it, and he's just going nowhere. So
I haven't actually seen too many pre or post race interviews with Tsunoda, so I can't really judge his character, or I wouldn't be able to give it a good go. He was very invisible during the whole race. There was not much footage at all. So yeah, he kind of slipped under the radar, but it is kind of disappointing to see what he had right at the beginning in testing, to see where he's come now. It's just been like a pretty downward trajectory.
That's a hard word to say on a Monday, isn't it? Yeah. But yeah, it's a shame. We all want to see him, with the potential that he had at the start of the year. So it does feel like he's just got a little lost somewhere, and someone needs to sit him down and just say, relax. It's all going to be all right. But yeah, so P16 for him. Nicholas Latifi and George Russell, P15 and P14. We're going to get onto it at the end. Basically, a lot of this, fundamentally, because the race was so processional, all we're looking at here is the results of qualifying.
Yeah.
Obviously a couple of retirements helped and a couple of clever strategy helped. But yeah, Latifi and Russell, again, a pretty quiet race, didn't they? Latifi had that accident. Was it in quali or in free practice? I can't remember. But he did have a bit of an accident, Latifi. But nice to finish the race, I suppose. Is that how you just comment on them? Yeah, exactly. It was fine. So yeah, they had a pretty nondescript race. Alonso, again, just
grid filler,
paces. We can talk about them together actually, because Alonso followed home Danny Rick, P12.
Yeah,
what is happening with Danny Rick?
He did say, I watched a pre-race weekend interview. I think it was with Natalie Pinkham. Yeah. Pinkham. And he said, I think it was in Spain. He said it was the first time that him and Carlos were able to have a conversation, and Carlos said, "The car's weird, isn't it?" About the McLaren.
Interesting.
And Danny Rick was like, "Thanks for telling me now."
Yeah. Cheers, mate.
Yeah, and he is saying quite a lot, like, I'm sick and tired of talking about this. I've just got to get my head down and figure it out. But there is obviously something quite unique about that car, in the same sense of that Red Bull with everyone jumping into it. Obviously, Verstappen, the car's being built around him and his driving style. It just shows what experience can do with Lando. Obviously, he's a very, very talented and fast driver, but so is Danny Rick.
Absolutely. No, Danny Rick has not suddenly lost all of his skills and ability.
I just think it's a really, really weird... It must be a really weird car to drive. Maybe the accelerator's on the left and the brakes on the right.
You never know with McLaren. But the thing is, you're so right. Fundamentally, we know this, and we've spoken about it before. When drivers move teams, they do have to relearn sort of how to drive, or how to drive a certain car.
It's easy for a spectator to just assume all Formula One cars drive the same.
That's exactly it. And it's not that case, and people do have to get up to speed, and we have seen it a lot in recent years, but it's hard when you see a driver of such a caliber move team to not be straight on the pace. Yeah. But even if you look at Hamilton back in 2010, what year did he move to Mercedes? 2013.
I don't know.
He was off the pace compared to Rosberg. He did manage to get the one win, but Rosberg got two in the end, and he didn't look as competitive. Then going in 2014, he had that experience and he was right on the money, and he's just got better since then. So it takes that time. We've seen someone like Sainz being able to, as I say, mold themselves to new teams very quickly. He's been, Toro Rosso, Renault, McLaren, Ferrari. He's been able to pick up the sort of skills and abilities very quickly. But I listened to a really interesting chat, weirdly, with Kamui Kobayashi. What a throwback! On Beyond the Grid, and he was talking about the fact that this is the real part of Formula One. Yes, it does depend on what car you're in, but it depends as a driver how you gel with the car. And he made an interesting ability to adapt, but also how it suits you and your driving style. And he made a really interesting observation about Verstappen. We all know that Red Bull is very twitchy, very oversteery, very sharp, and very to the point, which is why so many of these second drivers have really struggled to get on top of it, because it's just, set up in a different style, which Max Verstappen clearly loves. And he said, the thing about when you gel perfectly with a car, you're able to deliver 110%. And that's what makes you the superstar. That's what we've seen with Hamilton. That's what we see with Verstappen. That's what we saw with Schumacher and Ferrari, etc., is the driver and the car are perfectly gelled and bonded. At which point the second driver, the teammate, often doesn't gel with the car because it's so suited to that one driver, and the team push it in that direction. And each driver has their own style. You can only change your style and your format so many ways. And Kobayashi was saying, whilst Verstappen is extracting 110% from that Red Bull, could he extract 110% from a Mercedes? Kobayashi said, I don't think that he would. He would extract 100% and he'd be very fast, but he wouldn't be 110%. So he could still win championships, he could still achieve, but it's all about that perfect gelling. And you're right. I think Lando hasn't known anything else in McLaren. He's come in, that's his Formula One experience. And over the last few years, he's been able to just extract more and more. And that's what he knows. Danny Rick, who spent the last few years changing teams and having to relearn things, has now stepped into a car that potentially, according to Carl Sainz, is odd. And he's just like, he can't quite calibrate his brain yet to drive around that potential car.
I think there are so many, I'm just thinking whilst listening to you, there are so many factors that we're missing, in the sense that when you're changing teams so much, you're also changing a hell of a lot more than just driving the car. All of the personalities that are in your team, you're probably changing where you live. Therefore, you're probably going to be away from your family. And it goes back to the first time I realised that with footballers, and realised why sometimes when they move teams and potentially from a French team to an English team, how much their performance can change based on just their personal situation, being away from family, sort of being by yourself, you're in a different country, not speaking the language. So even though Danny Rick is now with McLaren and was with Renault, like there's just so many pieces to the puzzle that aren't quite fitting together yet. Whereas, like you say, with Lando Norris, he's come in. That's all he knows.
It's all he's ever known.
Yeah.
So he's putting in fantastic results, which is testament to the driver that he is right now, the caliber that he's operating at. But the point which Kobayashi made that I hadn't considered is, you know, as great as a driver is, an Alonso, a Hamilton or whatever, until they've gelled with that car, they might be operating at 100% their natural raw ability, but can you go that further length to be the dominant team member, to be the championship contender, etc., etc.? And Danny Rick's on the opposite end of that spectrum, is when he gets to a level where he can be 100 and 100, can he stretch further? But at the moment, he's at like 75. So it needs time. I think he's as frustrated as we are as fans. Alonso's clearly in the same position, just can't get his head around these cars, this new car and the new tyres and stuff like that. So I think Alonso, maybe we're not going to see reach the heights of previous years. I think he might have a bit of a Schumacher comeback, you know, where he's going to sit there, he's probably adding a lot to the team, blah, 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 but...
he's selling merch.
Selling match, as you said at the beginning of the year, so controversially. Danny Rick.
Sorry, Alonso fans.
Sorry, Alonso fans. I'm not sure there are that many these days, actually. Really? Yeah, I don't know. Danny Rick, it did take him about 6 months to get up to speed in the Renault in 2019. So I think, you know, it does give him time. I'm hopeful that it's going to get there. 11th and 10th, the Alfa Romeos. Now, this is the interesting thing that I sort of wanted to know, is Ferrari's strong weekend did also see Alfa Romeo performing well, which made me question whether somehow Ferrari managed to turn up that wick on that engine. I don't know what they could have done or were able to do, or whether just the characteristics of the engine suited the track, but it was a strong race for Alfa Romeo. And, you know, right at the sort of border of the points there, but looked more competitive at certain stages.
Didn't Giovinazzi jump?
Giovinazzi was in Q3.
5 or 6 points? 5 or 6 places during the race?
I don't know, because he started in start P10? He started in the top 10.
I'm getting confused with the graphic that I saw that followed all of the drivers. You know, as it goes through the laps and laps, and it just looked like Alfa Romeos were all over the place. But
I'm not sure. I can't remember their strategy. But, you know, it was a solid.
I saw it. I was like, fair play.
It was a solid performance from them. Ocon as well. Yeah, I mean, you know, he's doing well, Ocon. Yeah. But is that the car? Is that him? We don't know. You know, if you base it on his... you know, his season last year, it doesn't look as special as he maybe once was considered, but he's starting to bang in results, so pretty good. Lance Stroll, quiet weekend for old Stroll, I think.
Yeah, very quiet
couple of mistakes.
We can just go back to his comment he made at his first Monaco. It's much easier on the PlayStation, so I can understand. I can understand why he probably had a quiet weekend.
Probably waving to his mates on the boat as we talk about, Dad,
oh man,
Dad,
I could have done with that jacuzzi today.
Keep the champagne for me, guys. And then we come on to Lewis Hamilton. Now, I don't want to fanboy too much here, and I don't want to make excuses. He had a bad weekend. You know, I don't think his head was in the game. He was frustrated. The car obviously wasn't where it wanted to be. He wasn't allowed to, or he wasn't able to show any of his, you know, what was that noise? Can you hear a weird noise?
Yeah.
It's not going to be picked up on the microphones, but it sounded like a baby screaming. I think it's somebody in the garage next door. Okay. Anyway, sorry, that was just
actually a baby.
Yeah, it was very distracting for a second. But yeah, so the only time we got to see any kind of Lewis Hamilton skills or ability was when he went for his fastest lap moment, and he was a second or a half quicker than anyone else, but in clear air.
Yeah.
And I do think this was a large factor that you simply cannot overtake at Monaco these days, and also maybe the fact that no one was willing to try and overtake. that meant he just sat there. He got screwed over by the strategy. Mercedes were not on their game this weekend with strategy, and he just couldn't do anything. So comes home in P7.
Yeah.
Is what it is.
Not much more to say, really.
Just,
And from a Lewis fan, I wasn't actually that fussed. It's nice to see Max pick up all of those points, jump ahead in the World Championship, because then I feel like what I was saying about Charles Leclerc, all that's going to do is drive Lewis on for the next race weekend. So we're just going to get back into the back and forward, the dogfight, and this will only spur him on, which will eventually make the fight better. So I think I said it on Twitter, I want Max to pick up maximum points here just for the championship fight.
Great for a season, right?
Yeah.
And what we haven't seen in the last 6 years or so with Mercedes is a season-long fight, like a proper dogged, swaying back and forth fight. If you look back to the Ferrari and McLaren years of the early noughties, or Williams McLaren years, or Red Bull and Ferrari years, proper season-long slogs. Mercedes have never had to do that.
Yeah.
They might have had a couple of rivals here and there when Ferrari had some strong openings to the year, whatever it might be. But what we're seeing here is potentially Mercedes under pressure, and how are they going to react to that? And in Monaco, they didn't react well.
No.
We saw in Spain, they reacted fantastically. But in Monaco, it wasn't there. I don't think their cars have ever massively suited Monaco. Lewis himself, I think it's one of those tracks he wishes he was way more successful at, but he actually hasn't really been that great at. Because he idolizes Senna so much. I think he wants to be, the master of Monaco. It just doesn't work out for him. And it was just a relatively nondescript weekend, but a great weekend for the championship to see him so low down. Yeah. So, from that point of view, I'm not going to complain.
Yeah.
Pierre Gasly, P6, fantastic.
Yeah.
Great qualifying, great result, really strong
He
from
loves
him.
it. I think he loves it there.
It's been a quiet few races for Pierre, and this was what we wanted to see from him. Did really well, put his name back in the hat for the future. And then I think my second favourite result, and apparently a fan favourite result,
I was going to say, this
P5, Sebastian Vettel, driver of the day.
Unbelievable.
Legend! We were all like, yes, he's back!
He's back from the dead.
Honestly, because he was solid throughout free practice, great qualifying. Was he P8?
He was just behind Lewis, so he was on the same bit.
row.
Yeah.
So great qualifying from him. Definitely looked way more competitive than Stroll throughout the weekend. Good strategy, and then that coming out of the pits alongside Gasly and just absolutely pinning the throttle up the hill.
And then we got the Stroll instant replay.
I don't know what was up with that Monaco Grand Prix director that weekend. But
Lawrence Stroll got played. No.
Show Aston Martin whilst his other driver was about to do a key overtake for the race weekend.
2 cars going into one corner is the best action we're going to get in Monaco.
And it was close. It was tight.
So tight.
The only real overtake of the weekend.
Yeah.
Or the race at least.
Yeah.
And cut away. I mean,
drag race up to Casino Square. What more could you want?
Shocking decision by the TV director. But it was great. And that really was our kind of only action apart from Schumacher lunging up the inside of Mazepin.
On that one.
Yeah, on that one. So great from Seb. He looked happy and buoyed. His radio messages were uplifting. And we did see was it Spain? He was slightly starting to get on pace, wasn't he?
Yeah,
So
I think he had a few battles as well.
I'm hopeful that this is the sign of Seb getting on top of this car.
And the Aston Martin car kind of coming into its own a little bit, because we realised at the beginning of the season they were talking a lot about how they got screwed over.
So fingers crossed, they've kind of figured some things out, and this is positive signs for Vettel.
Your jumper looks quite like Aston Martin colour, that top half.
Oh, well,
I didn't know.
On brand.
That luminous green bit is very AMR.
It's very in your face, isn't
very it? Very AMR.
I'm a fashionable guy.
You are a fan.
P4 Sergio Perez did what he needed to do in the race, I suppose. Shocking qualifying. But to get up to P4. Okay, so let's get into it now, because he was closing in on Norris, and I would say he had the pace advantage on Norris, right? But I think my feeling for this entire race was none of the drivers were even prepared to attempt an overtake this year in Monaco. Mm-hmm. We all know it's difficult. We all know it's near impossible because of the format of the cars, the size of the cars, and the layout of the track. But we have seen in previous years at least some attempts on overtaking. Take the
odd lunge.
Was it 2019 or whenever we were last there?
Yeah, it was, Verstappen.
Verstappen trailing Hamilton, and so you can at least apply more pressure, but because there was so much tire management going on, and I think also because of the strategies, people were so terrified of a safety car potentially ruining their race. No one was willing to try that. And I do feel like with Perez and chasing Norris, maybe
he
even
caught him so fast.
But maybe Red Bull were like, don't do anything, because if you do and there's a safety car, Lewis is going to fly up the order and then we're screwed on our championship points. And I just think they said to him, just sit there.
Yeah.
You're fine. Like, try and put some pressure on, but just sit there. Like, it was surprising that. And that's what I felt let down by as a fan watching. I knew it was going to be processional, but I just think that all the drivers, the minute lap 1 was done, were like, cool.
Yeah.
Just got to finish the race now.
Yeah. And I kind of felt like, yes, the drivers are really pushing, and they definitely weren't coming off the pace. Like, just you could tell from the lap times. I did kind of feel like they weren't risking anything. And that's kind of, covering your point. I felt the same, and I'm sure a lot of other audience members probably felt the same.
It meant that, unfortunately, we just had this very sort of boring race. But we ended up with an incredible podium for fan favourites, for the championship season.
This is Monaco, like, all over. Every single time you get this really exciting buzz around the Saturday, and we got a little bit of a slither of excitement around the Sunday just before the race started. Then 2 hours of, like, just watching cars go around in a circle, not doing anything, and then all of a sudden the checkered flag drops, and then we all realise that we've got a bloody awesome podium. Everyone goes mental.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah. It's
hilarious.
I can't wait for next year.
But it was cool to see those three on the podium.
And it felt like...
Can you imagine Jimmy's that night with all those three? Oh my God.
People, if you don't know, Jimmy's a big club in Monaco, which is where all the action happens. Can be a little bit
I'm
chaotic.
never there. I just see it on Instagram the morning after.
I've never been.
It's actually videos from Seb.
Seb Delaney has a VIP membership to Jimmy's.
Oh, he does.
But it was
got a loyalty card.
It felt like, with free drinks for life, it felt like
you can tell
the coming of the youth.
Yeah.
This race weekend, I think, like with Lewis struggling, with Ricciardo, this was the moment for a lot of the young and new talent to really shine, and they did. And it felt like this new generation, this new era of this is maybe what Formula 1 is going to be for the next 5, 6, 7 years. The likes of a Leclerc, Verstappen, and Norris, a Sainz, etc. And to touch on Lando, he's nailing it, isn't he?
He's just clinical.
P3 in the championship now. As it seems like he's really got to grips with that car, and he just knows how to extract the maximum in a very consistent way.
Yeah.
He is now what Perez should be, which is he's the next man. If there's anything ever goes wrong, he's right there.
Yeah. 4th
or 5th or whatever, ready to scoop up a podium, ready to scoop up maximum points, and we're seeing it now in the championship in P3. And I don't want to get carried away, but if McLaren were to keep developing that car throughout the season, Mercedes have already said that they're sort of scaling back a lot of their development. There is a chance that he could, at some point, become a bit of a championship contender, a rogue outside choice. Because if he keeps banging in these results, all it takes is a couple of unreliable races for Max and for Lewis.
Yeah.
He's going to be right there.
Yeah.
He's only 20, 30 points behind, I think.
To be able to drive with that much experience, because let's be honest, he's not got that much in comparison to quite a lot of the other grid, and to do it consistently and under pressure, because he got on I think one of his pit crew got on the radio, it was around like lap 60 out of 78, right, no mistakes, get your head down, this is where all of the drivers sort of like cock up. And then 5 laps later, he saw Perez in his mirrors, and he just basically told his pit crew, shut up, I'm getting my head down and driving. And he did. Yeah. It wasn't like Perez just sat behind him and just hugged his rear bumper for the rest of the race and made a few lunges. There was no way round for Perez. Like, Lando made it incredibly hard for him.
I agree. And I think it was a very impressive drive, but an unbelievably impressive season so far.
Do you think it's because he's calmed down, his banter, his memes, his social, his Twitch?
He hasn't really... I mean, it's still there. It's just been formalised more now with Team Quadrant and things like that. So it's all got a bit more of a sort of...
Which definitely means there's people running it for him.
1,000,000%. But
there was definitely a time where I reckon Zach Brown sat him down and said, right, enough of the jokes. If you want to be successful. And I reckon Zach Brown is the sort of character that would have done that. I know he kind of sees him as a bit of a son figure.
Father-son relationship.
But there must have been that conversation at some point. Because he was coming off track and posting like emojis of milk.
Yeah, no, his first year and a half,
it was a bit of a joke.
It was too much.
Yeah.
And he got a lot of slack for it, but he was still nailing the results. That's what I think people lost or forgot is...
he was still pulling stuff out the back.
The old old Formula One, the David Coulthards and things like that.
Yeah.
I think were upset that someone could come in, a bit like when Lewis used to party, or still does really, but he used to party so much and then deliver and turn up and get poles and wins. Or if he didn't, it's because you were partying. He's like, well, I was partying when I won all those races as well. So it was the fact that someone could come in and do all that and then be so jokey and on social media and whatever. I think Lando still has that. I think his personality's changed. I think what he might have realised is, I think firstly, he's become way more confident. I think he's been boosted by the confidence in himself and around the team. And I think he's realised what goes into being a proper Formula One driver. Not, he's always had skill and ability and he can drive fast, but to do what he's doing now, to be insanely consistent, to put yourself in a position where you're sort of real outside championship contender in a car that shouldn't be, you have to wholly focus on that. And so whilst he still is streaming and doing all these things like that,
I don't think his personality has absolutely not changed. I just get a different vibe from his social.
Yeah, and I disagree that Zach Brown would have said that, because I think he's kind of in love with Lando and I think he likes the whole band. I wonder whether someone within a management team or whatever it might be just went, look, let's give you an outlet for this. Let's formalize it. Let's make it into something so that you can focus on racing 100%, and then you'll have your time to come and do this, and we can help run that. Rather than him, as you say, going home and spending 2 hours creating a nice meme, or because that's what, we know what goes into creating some of those GIFs and things like that he was doing, and he just seemed to be doing that between practice sessions. So
well, this weekend Lewis posted an ad for a fridge.
That was
just before
awful.
qualifying.
That was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
Just looking through the window of my fridge at what I've got for lunch.
You knew where his priorities were at. But yeah.
It will definitely be prepared by my personal chef.
Congrats to Lando anyway.
Yeah.
And P2, another one we have to say big congrats to, Carlos Sainz. Now, I am impressed by Carlos Sainz.
Yeah.
As we mentioned, he's moved a lot of teams in recent years. He's always been able to seemingly get on the pace very quickly. And since day one in that Ferrari, he's been putting pressure on Charles Leclerc. And I think helping to really push that team forward. And what he's doing so cleverly, clever guy.
Clever Carlos.
I
can see that catching on.
Is really playing the team game in every way except on track, or maybe in his mind, where he's definitely out for himself. I think he's realised that Charles is this golden boy. Ferrari are obsessed with him. They love him. He's clearly got all the skills and the talent. I think Carlos thinks he's as quick. Maybe he even thinks he's quicker than Charles, so he's not worried in that sense. But he knows there's no point in going in there, either being the number 2 driver or being the aggro Bottas. Oh, you can't come through. I'm Bottas. I eat porridge. So instead, I think his team radio at the end of the race was so telling about his mentality right now, which essentially, let's face it, he thought he could have been on pole. And you've got to say by practice pace, he might have been. I still think Charles would have pipped him, but he might have been. And he gets P2, solid result for himself, and he did put some pressure on Max at certain times. But the first thing he said was, I know that you're all going to be upset because Golden Boy's not in the race, and it's been disappointing, but congratulate yourself on your work for making this car so good. It was not about him at all. It was all about them. He was very empathetic. And I think as the Ferrari team, they must go, thanks. Yeah, Cart, thank you so much.
Such a sweet message.
Like a nice warm hug.
Yeah.
And he's pointing in the bag. And that
made me feel really special.
Yeah. That will do a great...
I did do a good time change.
I like that guy. Yeah. So whilst I don't think he's going to be able to ever get Ferrari to step away from the chosen one, he's just doing a very good job at ensuring he's not number 2.
Yeah.
That he's really there. And
the moment you fall into team orders, let Leclerc through, you're always going to be the number 2.
Exactly that. But also your mentality. If he'd come on and be like, yeah, boys, like P2, like best weekend ever. Yeah. The team might be like, yeah, but Charles didn't start. Yeah. So, and then he would be like, oh, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
But he's just clever enough to realise that the atmosphere in the team would have genuinely been, well, Charles could have won. Yeah. So, like, cool that you got P2, mate. But if our golden boy had started, he could have won. So
clever Carlos strikes again.
Very clever Carlos strikes again. And good result. I mean, at one point, he was catching Verstappen by 1.5 seconds a lap. Really annoyed me that Brundle and Crofty didn't pick up on it. Literally came out. I think the gap after the pit stops was like 9 seconds, and he got it down to 2.8. He was rapid, but obviously Verstappen was managing the gap because then he just went.
Yeah.
But it was impressive to see, and just a really good weekend from Sainz. And I'm excited by where he's going in that Ferrari. I see it more as a let me think, like Massa Schumacher or maybe Massa Raikkonen at their peak partnership rather than
a 1 and a 2.
A 1 and a 2. I think they're going to push each other forward, and he's going to get some race wins.
Yeah, I'm quite glad that he's proving me wrong, because I did come out and say, I don't think Carlos Sainz is a Ferrari driver. I don't see him as a Ferrari driver.
It still doesn't quite gel for me, though.
Yeah, it does look a little bit weird. Yeah, because he looks so Spanish.
Yeah. Who should he be driving for?
Yeah.
There's no more HRT.
Cupra. In Dakar.
Could you? That's his dad. But yeah, very cool to see. And then numero uno, Max Verstappen. So, I mean, exactly what Max needed to do. Didn't make the mistakes that
he did kind of have it gifted to him.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Which, I mean, is not me being a Max hater, just because I'll be in the doghouse with my girlfriend more than anything. She's a massive Max fan.
Aren't all girlfriends. So annoying.
But, yeah, at the end of the day, there wasn't really much more that he needed to do.
No, it was super solid. It looked like he was totally on top of it.
As you would expect from him.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like, he might make a mistake, might end up in the barrier. Like,
nowadays,
yeah,
it's not what we see. And I feel like Brundle and Crofty were trying to that's where he crashed. He goes past remember when he crashed there?
Yeah.
Oh, when he crashed there? But nowadays...
we've got this replay somewhere.
Yeah. He doesn't seem to do that. It's solid. He saw the opportunity. He knew what he had to do. And we so needed this. I think everyone thought, it'd be great if they could get a win, Lewis in second, but we so needed this for the championship. First time he's led the championship in his career, which is kind of nuts to think of and to say. And races like this are key to see us, have a championship battle throughout the year. And they've got to keep applying this pressure, but also nailing these moments, stealing these opportunities. So it was great. I know I kept saying that I think Leclerc would have kept the pole anyway, but Max did look like he had it in him if he really managed to get on top of it to maybe steal the pole. So I do think the victory kind of looked his throughout most of the weekend. Yeah. But as we know, because as we saw, no one was overtaking. Yeah. So if Charles had been on pole and got away into that first corner first, I think,
Because Max didn't really get a good start.
Didn't really get a good start.
Bottas got a really good start.
100%.
And Max covered him so fast. That it kind of defeats the theory of Max would probably have lunged Leclerc into turn 1. I don't think he probably would have.
And I think Leclerc would not have let him pass.
Yeah,
a bit like Hamilton.
He's a good enough of a driver to have put the car where he needed to.
Oh, 1,000,000%. At home.
And that would have been, in a Ferrari, the end of it.
He just never, so cool to see. And I say the podium was fun because all ex-teammates essentially.
Yeah.
All theoretically good mates from what we see online and social media. They all chat to each other, all call each other. And there was the jesting that we wanted to see, this sort of good camaraderie.
And Leclerc was there to watch it.
Yeah, he was. Which again was very clever from Charles. Yeah. So team, I love the team.
Yeah.
Team,
it's only because his flat is literally next door to Raskas. But he was like, I might as well stay.
Oh, yeah. I ain't got long to go home. But look, we said that we would talk about it. We kind of have to. Did this race once again, put sort of... Should we be asking the question of modern day Formula One cars?
I don't think we should. We shouldn't be asking the FIA.
We can.
Oh, okay. So
should we be racing at Monaco in modern Formula One cars?
It's not really a race. The Saturday is the race done. And once the results are in of qualifying, it's kind of like, well, that's how they're going to finish. And I think as Formula One fans, that's what we expect. Every now and again, obviously, we get safety cars, we get the odd pit strategy that might change, or the odd mistake that might move the order around a little bit. As from a spectator point of view, those 2 hours are the dullest 2 hours of the entire weekend.
Usually,
we've experienced Monaco Formula One weekend as fans actually being there, and one of the most exciting elements for us as supercar fans is the moment that the cars actually get off the track and they open the roads back up, because then it becomes a street party filled with supercars, and it is one of, if not the most electric, incredible atmospheres I've ever experienced on any weekend. It's not just Formula One. It becomes a really special environment.
It's being there.
Yeah, and I think that's part of why drivers love it, as well as it being a completely different discipline to a normal track, and they have to dial their skills in a different way. We're never not going to see Monaco.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I would love to see a slight redesign of the circuit And this island that's being built, I've heard these rumours that there's going to be a straight out there. There's going to be DRS over to the island that gives the drive. It will make a more exciting race. And I think I said this to you in WhatsApp, but I do believe that we should have a sponsor come on and give us enough money to go down to Monaco to reroute the circuit, to look for overtaking opportunities, give us 2 Formula One cars, and hopefully, hopefully we can find a few extra overtaking opportunities.
Go on.
Look, we saw last year that Formula One can survive without Monaco. It's not irreplaceable. And we did get some amazing races. The championship last year was amazing without Monaco. I just hope that FIA see what we've all seen this weekend and change it up a little bit to make it a more enjoyable race and a more enjoyable race weekend. Did I summarise that one?
Yeah, you did very well. I think what I would disagree on you in terms of changing the track layout, because I think Monaco is what it is because of the track layout, because of the sights,
I'm not saying go up to La Turbie.
Yeah.
I'm saying
that'll be sick.
you cannot mess with that history, but evolve it into this time period, because the race has been going on for years when cars were much smaller.
Of course. I mean, that's the biggest thing. I mean, it's not just cars, it's the size of the cars.
Yeah. Because
if you go back to previous years when overtaking was just as difficult, the physical size of the cars did mean that people could lunge slightly easier. I think for me, if it's this kind of race that stands out by itself, it's very different. The cars behave differently. They've been set up differently. The format of it, everything is different about Monaco, right? So why not totally embrace that? Why not basically scrap the race? Because
just have it as an exhibition.
Well, no, for me, qualifying in Monaco, unbelievable.
Yeah.
The excitement, the skill that you can see. For me, it's the only real place that you can see Formula One cars really being maxed out. It's visually so exciting to watch, and you can see where drivers are maxing out, where they're gaining in terms of lap pace and things like that. So we're going to see this year these sprint races coming in for qualifying, stuff like that. But instead, why not say Monaco?
Be go-karts.
No.
Just put them in go-karts.
Don't put them in go-karts.
Or motorbikes.
No. Change the format of a race weekend and don't actually have the race.
Right, yeah.
Basically have 2 qualifying sessions or elongated qualifying sessions. A bit like, the Indy 500 we're seeing at the minute with the top 9 shootouts and the last one.
Yeah. Basically, cars on track at different times. Not 20 at the same time fighting for the same thing.
Whatever it might be, in a sense where essentially it's a time trial.
Yeah.
Essentially it's hot lap challenges on the Saturday and the Sunday.
TT.
Yeah, and you say it's a little bit exhibition. Like, you're right, Isle of Man TT. So maybe it's average laps. So fastest 5 average laps or something like that, whatever it might be, because that was so exciting with Indy 500 last night. So I think why not embrace the difference of it? The fact that the sport is moving forward. Clearly the actual race doesn't have... Well, it doesn't, what's the point? It's a procession, as we know, and it really is becoming more and more processional, and the drivers are not willing to take the risks. But they are in qualifying, and qualifying is thrilling. So why not max that out? And as I say, see if you can exploit that even further and give it different points or the same points, whatever it be. And we can celebrate it for what it is. And it's this one weekend where it's always about raw pace and speed and ability.
Just, as unique as that setting is, make the race unique. Make the weekend unique.
Make it unique, and it's just the sound, and it's
like
still
a Le Mans start.
Yeah, Le Mans start. No, but I think average, average high speed laps. To say, like, if they're saying that they were all building up to this one lap, why not try and do that over 5?
Yeah.
The concentration that we'll have to see, the skill, the blah blah, and you could have 2 goes on a Sunday or whatever. Anyway,
and the graphics would be insane because you'd be focusing on that one car, so you could just have all of the data, all of the statistics. From a spectator's point of view, it would actually be more enjoyable to watch and track that one car as it goes round and just stagger them.
And from the driver's point of view, the skill level is still required, and actually it's more rewarding, because I think drivers would say, oh, well, it's a test to drive for 2 hours around Monaco. Like, that is, the skill that it requires is amazing. But to drive 5 laps consistently at a super high speed for maximum points, the concentration of that, they all build up to it for 1 lap on the Saturday.
Yeah.
Imagine if you have to do 5 on Sunday morning and on Sunday afternoon or whatever it might be. But
Should we say it's compulsory for them to all go out the night before as well?
Yes. All with a hangover. That was a great story as well. I've been listening to a lot of Beyond the Grid because I did this road trip last week, and they had no, it wasn't Beyond the Grid actually. It was after the Bring Back V10s, which is another podcast.
Sounds like a channel.
It's a good one. And they had Kimi Räikkönen's first ever engineer.
Okay.
And they went to Suzuka for the first time in his first season when he was 21 or something like that at Sauber. And he got to 130R, and the engineer was like, look, it's easily flat 130R. You've got to pay attention, but it's easily flat. They went out for free practice, and I think who was his teammate? Heidfeld, and he was doing flat straight away. But Kimi kept lifting, and he came in and said, the engineer said, Kimi, like, it's a bit weird. I told you it can be flat, and Nick's going flat. Why aren't you going flat? And Kimi said, come close. In FP2 it will be flat, but I have a headache still. So that's such a Kimi Räikkönen story. Yeah. But yeah, all in all, I did enjoy the Monaco Grand Prix weekend.
Exactly.
I enjoyed Thursday, this excitement that Ferrari had this pace. It was great seeing Monaco again. We're not, first time for us, I don't know about you, for like 5 or 6 years that we haven't actually been, that's such a horrible thing to say, but haven't been in Monaco. Like, it felt so weird not being in Monaco for the Grand Prix weekend.
You've done a few of them more recently than I have.
Yeah.
But it was nice. Do you know what it was nice to see? Not only fans, but also that little bit of buzz on social media from people that I know and follow, Supercar Blondie, Seb, those guys, to see the classic celebs that have gone to Monaco F1 like Serena Williams like to be there, and I think it's a sign to see that everything's kind of getting back to a sense of normality. It was nice to see it happen at Monaco.
I agree. No, it was nice to watch. Just unfortunately, a very
I think this
dull
podcast
race
has been more enjoyable than the race.
Oh God,
I've really enjoyed it.
Well, anything I wanted to pick up on, which we didn't really talk about, so I just want to say very quickly because we're going a little bit over on our time slot now. Is at the end, do you not think Verstappen, either he hates David Coulthard or he could not have cared less about that victory? His post-race interview, he was like standing there looking a bit pissed off and cold, and he was like, yeah, I just had to, manage the tyres and just do the race, and that's it. Yeah, it's nice to win. I was like, what the heck? Like, he was more bored by the race victory than we were by the race. Something weird happened there.
Is this the younger next generation not really caring about dominating Monaco?
I don't know, maybe, but Sainz and Norris were ecstatic, and we've seen all other Victors, Rosbergs and Ricciardos and Vettels loving, winning Monaco. Verstappen, his initial reaction, his celebration was huge. By the time he got to the interviews, either somebody had said something to him, or he hated DC because, as I say,
he doesn't hate DC, does he?
He was so standoffish and so fed up, and I was like, it's almost a bit rude to be so unengaged and not just like, like every other racing driver wins Monaco.
He realised that he was late for his sim race that night?
Maybe he was late for a sim race, or maybe Kelly Piquet said something, unfortunately I'm busy tonight, so no celebrating. Anyway, let's draw an end to this episode of After the Checkered Flag, our Monaco Grand Prix review. I think we got our full episode out of it. When Paul turned up today, I was like, this could be a really short episode, so I think we should pat ourselves on the back.
I think we covered that nicely.
We did. We will be back with you in some shape or form for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. I am not around on the Monday after, so either we've got to record on the Sunday afternoon or virtually. So we'll figure that out, but we will be back for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix.
I love Baku.
I know I don't want to hype it too much, but it does tend to be an exciting race, which means nothing will happen. But we'll at least be able to talk about it. So yes, let us know your thoughts about the race below. Let us know what you think about Monaco in the future. Should they change the format? Should they just leave it as it is? Should we just cancel Monaco entirely? We want to hear from you. So yes, if you're watching on YouTube,
I'm championing go-karts.
Stop chatting about go-karts. It's not Formula 1 at that point.
You
it's
go-karting.
Talk about
go-karts.
I do. And if you're listening,
back in the day, I was so good at go-karts. I was so fast. I was faster than Nigel Hamilton.
Literally. And if you're listening to us, you can tweet us and use the hashtag After the Checkered Flag.
Didn't you break your rib go-karting?
I did.
Yeah.
Took me a while to recover. Thanks for remembering that story. We will catch up with you soon. Make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications. You can find Paul at WallacePJW on most social media accounts. I'm at Scene2Glass on most social media accounts. And yes, we'll be back with you for Azerbaijan. Bye-bye.
Bye.